You're listening to School Leadership Reimagined, episode number 9.
Welcome to the School Leadership Reimagined podcast, where we rethink what's possible to transform your school. If you're tired of settling for small wins and incremental improvement, then stay tuned to discover powerful and practical strategies for getting every teacher in your school moving towards excellence. Now, here's your host, Robin Jackson.
What's up, builders? Welcome back to another episode of School Leadership Reimagined. I'm your host, Robin Jackson, and today's episode is all about what are your school's real core values. Now, I'm not talking about the core values that are on your wall or in your student handbook. I'm talking about the core values that are actually in place in your school, your real core values. And there's a difference. You see, what we say we believe and what we actually believe and do are often different. So today, I'm going to examine what are our real core values and how we can leverage them to do everything from holding teachers more accountable, to shaping our instructional program, to making better decisions, and to better communicating with parents and students. Your core values are a largely underused but really powerful secret weapon, and today we're going to uncover and use your core values like a builder. But before we do that, let's take a moment to thank today's sponsor. Today's episode is sponsored by my book, Never Underestimate Your Teachers. If you want to know how to move a teacher's skill and their will, then this book will take you step by step through the process, and it'll show you exactly what you need to do to get all of your teachers consistently moving towards mastery. You can get a copy of Never Underestimate Your Teachers by going to mindstepsinc.com/lead. That's mindstepsinc.com/lead. Okay, now let's dive into today's content. Have you ever gone through one of those core values exercises? You know the ones I'm talking about, right? The ones where you get a list of core values like love, loyalty, honesty, and truth. And then you have to check off all the ones that are the most important to you. And then you keep narrowing down your list until you arrive at 1 to 3 core values that are most important to you. So let's suppose that, I don't know, at the end of your core values exercise, you pick the core values of, the one that's coming to mind is funny, God, family, and football. So I'm borrowing that one from one of my favorite movies, which is The Best Man Christmas, in case you're wondering. And one of the main characters, his name is Lance, and when they asked him about his core values, he said his core values were God, family, and football. But what does that actually mean? I mean, what does it really tell me about who he is or how he makes decisions? So he says God is a core value for him. Who's God? In what way is God a core value? Do you just believe that there is a God, or do you believe in a particular God? And then what about family? Is he saying that he puts his family first? And if he's saying that, what does that even really mean? I mean, it could mean that he wants to take care of his family financially, so he works really hard and is never home, but he does that so that his whole family can be financially secure. Or it could mean that he wants to spend as much time with his family as he can, so he chooses a job that may not be as lucrative, but it gives him more time with his family. Or it can mean something else altogether. I mean, which one is it, Lance? And now I'm talking to a fictional character like he's a real person. So let me get back to the point. The point is that when you name your core values and you just pick words, they can be really confusing. And it gets even worse when we get to school core values. We write out these core value statements. We say our school stands for, curiosity and diversity, and we post them on a wall somewhere. But what do those core values actually even mean? For instance, I once worked in a school where the core values were respect, curiosity, and integrity. Okay. What does that even mean? I mean, who knows? Everybody had a different interpretation. Take respect, for example. To some of the teachers in the school, respect meant that the students were to be respectful to the teachers, but it didn't mean that the teachers had to be respectful to the students. And then for other teachers in the same school, respect was more about self-respect. And so they really pushed that aspect of it. And then to others in the same school, respect meant that students didn't yell out in class or they didn't roughhouse in the hallway. Everyone had their own understanding of that core value. And the reason that that's a problem is that if your core values are open to interpretation, if everyone gets to define them based on their own lens, their own perspective, their own beliefs and experiences, then are they even really core values? And yet, so many schools waste tons of time taking people through these painful core values exercises. And then they throw the finalist on the wall and check off the box. Yay, we have core values. But those core values tend to be impotent from the very start. Why? Because they live on a wall and not in the hearts and in the minds of the people who make up your school culture. Behaviors don't change. The core values have absolutely no impact on the decision making. And what's more, we often act in ways that directly contradict our core values in our day-to-day interactions with students, with parents, with each other. I'm going to go ahead and just say it. For many schools, your core values as they exist on the wall or in the handbook are a joke. We're not living up to them. Let me tell you what core values really are. Your core values are your non-negotiables. They are the lines over which you will not cross. I often say that if you're not willing to hire or fire somebody over it, it isn't a core value. So the idea here is that if you see your core values as non-negotiables, you immediately get clarity about what you mean, and now you can use that core value in some really powerful ways. So let me show you what I mean by that. You see, when most people think about their core values, they choose lofty terms like love and loyalty or freedom or service. But as we've already discussed, those words alone don't mean much, or at least they don't mean much because they're open to all these different interpretations. And if something means everything or anything, then does it really mean anything at all? But when you think about your core values as non-negotiables, well, things change. For instance, a lot of schools have a core value of lifelong learning, but what does that even really mean? Well, if you turn the core value of lifelong learning into a non-negotiable, it can become something like every member of our community will meaningfully engage in learning opportunities that go beyond the curriculum and the professional learning guidelines of the district. Well, that's very clear. That's what we mean by lifelong learning. Or it might become something like this. Every lesson will culminate in real-world connections for students. Again, now we know exactly what we mean by lifelong learning. Okay, here's another example. So suppose your school had a core value of honoring diversity. That turns up a lot. Well, if you turn it into a non-negotiable, that core value will now start to have meaning. So it might become something like, we will not make decisions about class placement on race, gender, or sexual preference. Or it could just as easily become something like, we will always maintain a staff that reflects the diversity of our student population. Now, I'm not asking you whether or not you agree with it, but once you hear the core value stated as a non-negotiable, you know exactly where that school stands. It's so much more clear. But turning your core values into non-negotiables is about more than just being clear. You see, once you rethink your core values in this way, when you see them as non-negotiables, you can now use your core values in 4 very powerful ways. The first way that you can now use your core values in a more powerful way once they're non-negotiables is that they become the filter through which you sift every decision that you make as a school, from who to hire, to how to manage your master schedule, to how to handle discipline, or what professional learning opportunities you're going to focus on for the year. Everything that you do as a school can now be filtered through your core values when they're written as non-negotiables. And that's because your core values establish boundaries for your school that define your organizational culture and that signal to every single person in your school and out of your school how they are expected to behave, how we make decisions as a school, and how everybody is going to be held and how everybody's going to be accountable. So in my last school, we did this. And let me tell you, it made such a difference. Before we were, dreading all these difficult conversations or agonizing over all of these decisions. But the moment that we started sifting every decision through our core values, all of a sudden it gave us all this clarity and it gave us so much more purpose. All these tough decisions that we were struggling with before suddenly became so easy and so clear. How should we structure the master schedule? Easy. What's the structure that best supports our core values? Or what should our discipline policy look like? No problem. Our core values made it very clear. How do we give teachers feedback? Pretty simple. We give feedback in a way that aligns with and supports our core values. Now, here's what happened. People stopped questioning and fighting the administrative decisions that we made. I'm serious. We just didn't have the same level of pushback. As long as we could defend our decision based on the core values that we had agreed upon as a school, well, everybody was cool, even if they didn't like the decision. Here's what else happened. Teachers stopped distrusting us and they stopped fighting us. Not in the same way. The core values gave our decision-making process immediate transparency. In every situation, everyone knew that we were going to make a decision based on our school core values. And because we were consistent about doing that, the teachers, the parents, even the students, they started to trust us. In fact, it got to the point where people would come into my office and they would make a request and then they would try to make the case for their point of view by saying something like, okay, and this aligns with our core values by. So all of a sudden now people are coming in and they're making the case for what they want to do based on our school core values. When you make your core values non-negotiables, you take all the drama and all the angst out of decision making. Tough decisions become exponentially less tough because your core values serve as your guide. And if you consistently apply your non-negotiables to every decision that you make every single day, your staff, your parents, your students are going to grow to trust you because you're consistently applying the school core values to your decision making. That is so powerful. Now, the second way that you can use your core values in a more powerful way once they're non-negotiables is that you can use your core values to make hiring decisions. So I'm going to talk about this a little bit more next time because next time we're going to be talking about the hiring process, but you can use your core values to shape the interview questions that you create. You can use your core values to determine how you're going to rate job candidates, how you can determine who you're going to eventually hire. And so instead of just looking at their qualifications, you can examine their core values and look for a fit between their core values and those in your school. Trust me, when you do this, you're going to hire much better candidates. Like I said, I'm going to go into more detail about that specifically in our next episode. So stay tuned for that one. Okay, so the third way that you can use your core values more efficiently and more effectively once they become non-negotiables is that you can use them to attract and recruit the right people to be on your staff. You see, when your core values are clear, you will immediately attract people who share those same core values with your school. And what's even more amazing, your core values are going to begin to repel those who do not share your same core values. Now, here's why that's so important. If people don't share your core values, the core values of your institution, if they don't believe in them, then they're going to wreak havoc on your school culture. They will never completely fit in, and they will always be kind of fighting against what you stand for as a school. So it serves you to make sure that your core values are very clear from the start so that people know what you as a school stand for. And if they don't agree with that, they can choose to go somewhere else. So let me give you a real life example so you can see what that means. You see, I once worked at a school where, I don't know how to quite say this, I think that academics weren't the focus of the school. And I hesitate to say that because it wasn't that we as a school didn't care about academics. It was more that our school was known for being a sports powerhouse than it was known for being an academic powerhouse. Well, early on, I started to really feel uncomfortable with the fact that there were so many gates for students who wanted to be in honors and AP classes. I mean, it was so hard to get into those classes. You almost had to, submit a blood sample, get a letter of recommendation from your ranking senator in order to get into these honors and AP classes. They thought they were doing it to protect kids from taking courses that might have been out of their reach, but we found that a lot of kids could be eligible for honors and AP courses. They just didn't know how to navigate the system the right way to get the right testing and the right letters of recommendation. So after a while, we made a case for dropping the gates for honors and AP so that any student who wanted to take those courses could be eligible to take those courses. Well, we started doing that, and soon after that, we started to see some success with it. And so it became this school core value. Our school shifted our core value to mean access for all. We took down the gates. And we actually started to experience success with increasing the rigor of our courses and getting more and more students into honors and AP courses and helping students successfully complete those courses. But there were a couple of people who didn't believe that all students should and could be successful with more rigor. Well, once that core value began to pervade our school, those people started to leave. They started to look for work elsewhere. And others who were hearing about what we were doing at our school and who wanted to be a part of that work, they began to join our staff. By making our core values non-negotiables, we were able to attract the right people to work at our school, and we began to repel the wrong people for whom our school was no longer a fit. And the same will happen for you. Once you make your school core values non-negotiables, everyone will clearly know where you stand, and they'll have to make a choice. Those who don't share those core values will naturally begin to look for work elsewhere, and those who believe in your core values will be attracted to your school, and they'll be dying to work with you. Now, the fourth way that you can use your core values more effectively once they become non-negotiables is that now you can use them to hold everyone accountable. You see, once everyone agrees on a set of core values, everyone is bound by them. And suddenly, difficult conversations become a lot less difficult because you're simply holding people accountable to something that they already agreed to. Now, I'll give you another example. This is kind of this is a story, but I'll tell you. You see, at my last school where I was an administrator, we spent months as a staff turning our core values into non-negotiables. And by the time we were done, we had 4 really strong core value statements around which the entire school, from the teachers to the paraprofessionals to the cafeteria staff to the bus drivers, we all agreed and came to consensus around these 4 core values. Well, after a month of trying to live out those core values and making our decisions using those core values and really letting those core values start to take root in our school because now they're non-negotiables, well, something happened. And I'm not going to go into detail about what did happen, but one of our teachers said something really racist to another teacher in the building about the students. And it was so offensive, I can't even repeat it here on this show, or you'll just vomit. Just trust me. It was really, really bad. It wasn't one of those PC things. No, it was out and out. It was bad. So what made it worse was that in general, the teacher who said it was a pretty toxic person. And in the past, she usually got away with her toxicity by being pretty passive aggressive, and no one really wanted to confront her on it. And even if you did confront her on it, she would just act all innocent and claim not to admit anything by the snarky remark or the passive aggressive thing that she said. And, just it was really hard to get through to her. So it had been an ongoing problem with this teacher, but, it came to a head when she said this thing that day. But here's the thing. Once we agreed as a staff around a set of core values, things changed. Things changed in our building. Things changed in the way we did things. So when I learned what she had said to this other teacher about the students, I'll be honest, I was pretty livid. In fact, I wasn't even thinking about the school core values. Frankly, I had a few core values of my own that I wanted to teach her. But once I calmed down and I got myself together, I called her into my office. And 2 minutes into the conversation, she was getting into her, I was only joking excuses. And I just stopped her and I said, Joan, okay, let's call her Joan. That's not her name. And no offense to all the Joans out there. That's just the one that came to my head. So I said, Joan, even if you were joking, that joke violates our core value. And then she tried it again. But I didn't mean it. She started protesting. And inside, I'm just rolling my eyes because she definitely meant it. But rather than get into that argument with her about it, I just simply returned to the core values. And I said to her, it doesn't matter if you meant it or not. Our core values say that here we honor diversity. And we spend a lot of time talking about what that means. What about what you said was honoring? Total silence. She just sat there and she hung her head. So I went on. I said, your words today violated one of our core values. And what's so disappointing to me is that you were a part of the process of developing those core values. You agreed, along with everyone else, that that was a non-negotiable. No one in this building is allowed to do anything that dishonors anyone else. And then I asked her again, do you still agree with that? And she nodded and she started to cry. And so I went on. I said, well, then joking or not, meaning it or not, you've crossed a line that we agreed as a staff we would not cross. This is not who we are as a school. And if you can't live out that core value in your interactions with students and with your colleagues, then this is not the place for you. When she heard that, she looked up, shocked that I had spoken so plainly. And I sat there and I just let her take it in. And after a moment of heavy silence, I told her to think about it and we would talk about it later on that week. And so later in that week, we met again. And this time she came into the office armed with a written apology to the staff member she said the nasty thing to. And I thanked her for it. And then I shared with her an MOU that I had written describing the incident and told her that it would be going in her file. And that's when she started to panic. So she started telling me how she'd marched with Dr. King and how she had many Black friends and blah, blah, blah. You know, she was doing her normal routine and making excuses again. And I stopped her and I repeated the core value and I asked her, do any of your reasons or excuses that you've just offered me erase the fact that what you did violated one of our core values? And she was quiet for a moment. And then she whispered, no, then I don't want to hear it. And then she said to me, I'm not a racist. And at that point, I just shrugged and said, then stop saying racist things. And with that, there was really nothing else left to say. Meeting over. That's what turning your core values into non-negotiables will do. It gives you clarity. It gives you a leg to stand on when you're holding others accountable. You see, once you agree as a school on a set of core values and those core values become non-negotiables, conversations that were once difficult or impossible are really cut and dry and excuses evaporate. Can you see how powerful your core values can become when you rephrase them as non-negotiables? So, how do you do that? How do you turn your core values into non-negotiables? Well, the good news is that you already have non-negotiables. You just don't realize that you do. We all have lines that we will not cross. We all have things that are so important to us that we would never think of not doing them. The trick is that we need to spend some time reflecting on them to suss them out. And we need to not think about them just as who we are as individuals, but who we are as a school. So the first step is to just take out your current set of core values. Now, if you don't have a list of core values for your school, you'll need to create some core values. And I'll share with you my favorite process for creating institutional core values in an upcoming episode. But I suspect that you probably already have a set of core values hanging on a wall somewhere or listed on your website. Or maybe you have a mission statement that indicates core values for your organization. The idea is to start with what you already have rather than trying to invent these from scratch. Okay, so the next step is to go through that list of core values and ask yourself, what do these things really mean? Or more important, what do these things really mean to us as a school? And then I want you to turn those core values into value statements. So for instance, suppose you have a core value of integrity. Well, that might become do the right thing even if no one is looking. Or suppose your school has a core value of inclusion. Well, that might become giving every student equal access to opportunities. Or here's one I hear a lot in schools. They have this core value of respect. And that might become always treat each other in a respectful manner. So you get the idea. You want to take one of these core values and turn it into a value statement that conveys what that core value really means to your school. And usually you use terms like always or never, and that can kind of help you turn that into a value statement. All right, now once you've created a value statement, you're not done yet. And that's because while value statements are a little bit better than just one word, I bet they still are a little fuzzy and they probably are going to need a little bit more refinement. For instance, in the example I just mentioned, what exactly does it mean to give every student equal access to opportunity? I mean, what does that even really mean? If I only had room in my honors class for 30 students, but I had 40 students who want to take the class, what do? If I have a student who wants to go to the school dance, but they've been suspended on the day of the dance, does that student still get to come to the dance? And if I have a teacher who thinks that a student really needs extra support, how do I deliver that extra support? You see, that core value doesn't answer the really important questions of the school, so it's not useful yet. Or here's another one. Take the statement, always treat others with respect. Well, what does respect look like? How do I know when I'm being respectful? So that's where the non-negotiables come in. The non-negotiables are clear guidelines about what we will and what we will not do. They animate our decisions. They keep us excited about what we do and why we do it. So let's take the inclusion value statement that we created for the example. We now say that we want to give students equal access to opportunities, but what does that look like as a non-negotiable? So what it might look like is we never exclude any student from academic or social opportunities for any reason. So if I only have room in my honors classes for 30 students, but I have 40 students who want in, I create another section. If a student is suspended the day of the dance, they still get to attend the dance. All of a sudden, that core value expressed as a non-negotiable gets crystal clear, doesn't it? Or take the respect core value statement, which was always treat others with respect. Well, if we turn that into a non-negotiable, it might become something like always treat others the way that you want to be treated, even if they don't reciprocate. So now I know exactly what respect looks like, and I know if I'm being respectful. Here's the value of turning your core values into non-negotiables. All of a sudden, you get very crystal clear about what you really believe. So that's the next step. Now, the final step is to try on your non-negotiables to see if you're really willing as an organization to live by them. For example, remember that inclusion non-negotiable where we said no student would be excluded from any academic or social opportunity for any reason? Well, are you really willing to let a suspended student attend a dance? And if the answer is no, then you might need to rework or reword your non-negotiables so it's truly something that you can live with. Because once they're done, once you establish your non-negotiables, you will need to live with and you'll need to live by them because they now become the compass that you're going to use to make all of your decisions and to govern how you're going to run your school. Once everyone agrees on a non-negotiable, everybody is now accountable to live by them. It's so powerful. I have lived this myself. The moment that you turn your core values into non-negotiables, everything changes for your school. So, as we wrap up today's episode, I just want to do a quick recap of everything we talked about today. And I also want to tell you that if you want to go through this exercise yourself, I'm going to give you a freebie for the week, and it just contains a summary of these steps that I'm talking about here and a couple of examples of how to turn a core value into non-negotiable, just so you can see what it looks like. Because your core values are this largely underused but really powerful secret weapon that you could be using to help make your school a lot more focused, to give yourself a lot more clarity, to build a lot more trust. And the way that you make your core values more powerful is to turn them into non-negotiables. Because when you turn your core values into non-negotiables, you immediately can leverage them into some really powerful decision filters that help you build consistency and trust with your teachers and with your parents and with your students. And you can use your non-negotiables to make hiring decisions. And remember, I'll talk about that a little bit more the next time, but you can also use them to attract the right people to your school. And here's the important part, repel the wrong people from your school. Once you agree as a school on a set of non-negotiables, you can immediately hold everybody more accountable. And in fact, you can be more accountable to the people you're serving. So the way to turn your core values into non-negotiables is pretty simple. So first, you're going to just make a list of your current core values. Next, you're going to turn each one into a value statement that gives you a little bit more clarity about what they mean. Then you're going to turn each value statement into a non-negotiable. And finally, you're going to try on your new non-negotiable to see if you can really live with it. If you can, then it's truly a core value. And if you can't, then you'll need to revise it until it accurately reflects the core values of your school. So now it's time for you to create your own non-negotiables. But before I send you off to complete the non-negotiable worksheet that it's included with this episode, I want to share with you two final caveats. First, the most manageable number of non-negotiables tends to be 3 to 5. Any more, and you'll have a hard time remembering them and using them to drive your decision. So don't overcomplicate things. Shoot for 3 to 5 school-wide non-negotiables. Choose the ones that are the most important to your school community and that make the biggest difference in how you operate as a school. Second, I want you to make sure that you choose non-negotiables that resonate with you and that represent what you as a school stand for. Sure, not everybody is going to share your core values or appreciate your non-negotiables, but that doesn't matter. I don't want you to be generic here. Determine the non-negotiables that define who you are as a school community and that keep every member of your community inspired and accountable. Nobody can tell you what your non-negotiables should be. You as a school have to decide those for yourself, and you're going to have to live with them. So don't be generic. Make sure they're things that really resonate to your school community. All right, so that's it for today. Don't forget to download your non-negotiables worksheet, and you can find it when you go to schoolleadershipreimagined.com/episode 9. And as always, if you have any questions about this week's episode, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn. And if we're still not connected on LinkedIn, then stop whatever you're doing right now. Find me at Robin Jackson on LinkedIn and let's connect. Now, I want to remind you about one more thing. If you're listening to this episode around the time that it first airs, then I want to invite you to a very special free training that I'm doing for those of you who are thinking about building your own education consulting business someday. If you've always wanted to start your own education consulting business, but you weren't sure how to start, or you wondered whether anyone would actually pay you for what you had to offer, or maybe you're just afraid to get going, then I want to invite you to participate in the Jumpstart Your Education Consulting Business 5-Day Challenge. During this challenge, we'll spend 5 days together figuring out what the focus of your education consulting business should be. We're going to figure out how to distinguish yourself from every other person out there calling themselves an education consultant, how to find and attract your ideal customers, and how to fund your new business, and the 3 things you absolutely must have in place before you quit your job. Plus, you're going to get a free workbook that you can use to develop your own roadmap to your education consulting business. And I'll be there each day offering live coaching in real time and giving you real-time feedback on what you're developing to make sure that you're on the right track. And get this, it's all free. All you have to do is sign up. Go to schoolleadershipreimagined.com/episode 9 and click on the button to join the challenge. Once you register, I'm going to send you everything you need to get started. Now, the challenge starts again on Sunday, May 13th, 2018 at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it goes till Thursday, May 17, 2018. And so for each of those days, I'll do a live training every evening at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you can't make the live trainings each day, no worries. I'll archive all of the trainings so that you can watch them at a time that works for you. But you're going to need to move fast. You see, once the challenge is over, we're going to close things down. It's just a pop-up group, a 5-day challenge to jumpstart your education consulting business. So if you want to join, now's the time to do it. Again, just go to schoolleadershipreimagined.com/episode 9 and sign up for the challenge. I'll make sure that I put a link to the challenge in the show notes. Now, next time, I'm going to be talking to you about 4 battle-tested interview questions that I always use to find and hire the best teachers. It's something that I've been asked a lot lately, and so I'm going to pull back the curtain and I'm going to share with you my secrets. And I've got a great freebie next week. It's a list of interview questions that you can use or that you can adapt to make sure that you run your next interview like a builder. So make sure you tune in for that. That's it for today. I'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for listening to the School Leadership Reimagined podcast. For show notes and free downloads, visit schoolleadershipreimagined.com. School Leadership Reimagined is brought to you by MindSteps, Inc., where we build master teachers.